Hi everyone. First of all, thank you for subscribing. In the meanwhile, I have 100 subscribers. No, not too many, but I also promised for the 100 subscribers I would make some new videos. I've received various questions from people asking me, how can you connect to Domoticz over the internet? In this video, I will show you with a fresh installation of the latest version of Raspbian, how to install Domoticz and how to set up a secure connection over the internet. Now, it's been quite a while before I made my own setup to be able to connect over the internet. So what I did is basically started from scratch with the latest version of Raspberry and Buster with desktop, just to make sure that you guys are not running into any issues, which I did not experience with my configuration. So what I did is I downloaded the latest Raspbian version. I configured the Wi-Fi and SSH function from the desktop console, and I'm currently running a remote session for my own operating system, and currently upgrading the packages just to make sure everything is up to date. Now, once the packages have been installed, we will first download Domoticz, install and configure it. And after the installation of Domoticz has been completed, we will go to our router settings. We will set up the port forwarding, which is required for the SSL certificate creation. Then we will create a DNS name. And so instead of going to an external IP address, we will go to a name. I'm using DDNS for that. And after we have a DNS name, we will create the SSL certificates. And the last step in the process is to create a script that will update the Domoticz standard certificates, and then we should be able to have our remote secure session set up. Now, when you've installed the latest packages, always make sure that you first do a reboot. You do that through the commando sudo space reboot. And after the reboot has been completed, we will start the Domoticz installation, where we will not set up any devices. So it's just going to be a plain installation of Domoticz, and pure for testing. And based on the bare installation, we will set up the remaining part. So we've rebooted the Raspberry Pi. So now we're going to install Domoticz. It's actually quite a quick installation process for Domoticz. You only need the required commando for the installation itself. During the installation, always make sure that you install both HTTP and HTTPS, both type of connections. You need to make sure up front that you have a static IP address set to your Raspberry Pi. I already had it configured up front. Here's the part where you select the services. So select both, which is the default, and press OK. Port number you can leave on default, 8080 for HTTP, HTTPS port 443. And installation folder you can leave at default and press OK. Now this is how quick Domoticz installs itself. And now you have the two addresses internally within your network, which you should be able to use to access Domoticz. Let's have a test on that one. So I'm going to use the internal IP address to see if at least we have a Domoticz connection. If that fails, then don't even bother to set up it remotely if it fails already internally. So let's have a look. That was my production machine. So now you're going to use the one we just set up. And yes, this is the default screen after you install Domoticz. So that looks successful. Now the next step in the process is that we're going to set up the port forwarding. There will be 2 rules set into your internet provider router. One rule will be to route all HTTPS port 443 traffic from outside to inside port 443 with the local IP address, which is then your Raspberry Pi. And the second rule we're going to set up temporarily is to be able to create the SSL certificates, and therefore you need to set open the outside port 80 and forward that port to your Raspberry Pi to either port 80 or 8080. So internally with the default Domoticz settings, it's port 8080. In my case, it's port 80 because I have a second router from my own, which is then forwarding port 80 to 8080 to the Raspberry Pi. So again, 2 different rules. One rule, external port 80 to internal, if you have the default Domoticz settings, to port 8080. And the IP address that you need to set up then is your internal Raspberry Pi IP address where you have Domoticz installed. And the second rule is for all the secure HTTPS traffic, you need to route port 443 from external to internally to your Raspberry Pi. So, and the initial rule for port 80 can be disabled after we created the SSL certificates. So for the DNS name, I'm using the website www.duckdns.org. It's blurred out here because I also have some private router details published. So what you basically do, you create an account on this particular website. You create a new DNS name, and the one we just created is www.domoticzyoutube.duckdns.org. And within this website from DuckDNS, after it's accepted your selected DNS name, then you need to fill out your external IP address from your router, and then there will be a connection between the DNS name and your router IP address. And this external DNS name will also be used in our SSL certificate creation, which we will be doing in a minute. So for the SSL certificate creation, we use the program Let's Encrypt. Or with the initial commando, we cloned the Let's Encrypt program to our Raspberry. Now it's very important that the port forwarding is set up correctly. If this is not set up correctly or not functioning, then you will not be able to create the SSL certificates, and this program will constantly fail. Now it will first validate if you have the latest packages installed. It will also add a few packages if you haven't installed them yet. And after the packages have been successfully installed, we will start creating the certificates. Now, the creating of the certificates is a very long command. There are some examples also on the internet. To be honest, the examples I saw, it's not very clear in the beginning. And hopefully also through this video, you at least know how to fill out this command successfully. Yeah, it's almost finished with the installation of the packages, which is required for the encryption certificates. It's also important to mention that these certificates will expire every 3 months out of the top of my head. And that also means the creation of the certificates, you need to do it every 3 months over again. And you can fill out your email address, which you'll also see in a minute once we fill out the command. And then you will get an email sent with the indication that you need to create your certificates within a number of days. It's also possible to automatically reinitiate the command to recreate these certificates. So basically automate this process and run it through your cron tab as an automated task. But it is not something explained throughout this video. Now we need to move one file. If we're not moving this file, then the process will also fail. So the MV stands for move. So we're going to move one file to our home folder. And now we will get the most difficult command throughout this part of the process. And what I just mentioned, so if you need to recreate the certificates after 3 months, if you want to do it manually, then this is also the renewal process. So using the same command again. So here you can also see the DNS name that we created on duckdns.org. So it's Domoticz youtube.duckdns.org. So the goal is, after we ran all steps, that we will hit the browser, fill out www.domoticz.youtube.duckdns.org, and it should visualize throughout a secure connection the basic Domoticz installation we did earlier. So this is the step for the SSL certificate creation. So here's the part, if something fails, and it's quite often to do with the port forwarding not set up correctly. Now, once this step has been completed, we will create a script to override the default certificates from Domoticz with the SSL certificates we are currently creating. It's also important to mention, and therefore we will create this script so that you can run it more often. If you update Domoticz, then you need to run the script we will create in the last step again. And the reason why is that if you update Domoticz, then the basic Domoticz certificates are installed again, which we need to override with the SSL certificates which we currently are creating. Now, all so far seems to be quite okay. No error messages yet. Well, let's agree here. Obtaining a new certificate. So here's the communication where we need the port forwarding. Congratulations. So yeah, seems that everything ran successfully. So now that we have the SSL certificates created, we need to update Domoticz, or basically override the default Domoticz certificates with the SSL certificates, and then we've completed the whole process. Now we're going back to the default Domoticz directory. Oh, that needs to be first pi, then Domoticz. Now I'm using the nano editor. It's fairly easy to use. So we're going to create this script. So I'm just going to call it script.sh. Please make sure that the extension is sh. And also make sure that you use the sudo command to start nano. Now we have a number of things here to add to our script. So we're going to create some lines in this particular script. That means if we run the script, then each of these lines we're typing in here will be executed by the script. First, with the rm command, we will remove the Domoticz default certificate, and then we will start copying over the information from our new SSL certificate into the default Domoticz certificate name. And after that has been completed, we also need to make sure that we restart the Domoticz service in order to activate these certificates. And yeah, what is important, so every time you do an update throughout Domoticz, you need to make sure that you run this script. So therefore, instead of running these commands one by one as a one-off, we're now creating the script. We're going to save it to be able to run it later on after we run an update. You just simply run the script, so you don't have to rewrite all the sentences again. They were already inside the script. And yeah, your SSL scripts will be updated again with the SSL ones. So last sentence created. We're going to save the nano script, where we need to do one step in addition. Because we created this script, we also need to make sure that this script is going to be executable. and therefore we need to run the chmod command in order to change the permissions on the script.sh file we just created in Nano. So in order to do that, we fill out the command sudo chmod space +x, x for execute, and then we apply that to the file we just created, script.sh. Then to run a script, you run the command // and then the command name, in this case script.sh, and it will apply the script we created. That means the correct certificates have been applied and the Domoticz have been restarted. Now all steps have been completed. We can test in our browser with the DNS name we created if Domoticz functions by using the SSL connection. So we're going to run the command https://www.domoticzyoutube.tuckdns.org. Let's see, hopefully it runs immediately. Yes, so here it is, everyone. We have set up a secure connection over the internet to Domoticz. Thank you very much for watching.